Hey guys, welcome back to Pearly Walking. Today I'm going to be summarizing what might be the biggest healthcare sector scandal here in the Dominican Republic, specifically regarding SENASA, which is our government-funded health insurance company. There have been so many reportings on the ordeals going on in SENASA that I just thought this video might be useful to sum up all the information and so you can get a lowdown of exactly what's going on, because it's a lot, okay? There has been information regarding mismanagement within SENASA and the administration in SENASA, but there have been actual report cases of people defrauding SENASA for large amounts of money as well. And these reports have gotten out to the public simultaneously, and that is why people are all jumbled up on the information regarding this huge, awful case. Also, there are possible ties with this Dominican SENASA fraud case to the American Medicaid record-breaking fraud case that has just gone down in June 2025. And of course, I'm here to give you the lowdown on that as well. And also, I'm going to be clearing up what went down with Presidente Abinader. Like, he made some declarations at the beginning saying that the government was already investigating the case back in 2024. And then he made a tweet about the fact that they are now going to be investigating. I'm going to give you all the rundown on that as well and explaining why the discrepancy. If you have no idea what this case even is, don't worry, I'm going to break it down for you and give you all the details. And if you're new, hi, my name is Ellie, and on this channel we talk all things Dominican Republic. So if you want to learn about the places I think you might want to see, chit chat about current events here, or learn about how things work or what things cost in the Dominican Republic, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel. So like I said before, the SENASA entire fraud case has two main arteries, okay? Those arteries go down in different veins and different, little legs of the entire thing. It's a huge ordeal, but the basic two arteries are: the first one is the mismanagement within SENASA and possible corruption within the contracts that were signed in the previous administration. And the second artery has to do with fraud against SENASA and its affiliates with people outside of the actual company. So as you may already know, Presidente Abinader's first government began in 2020, and on that same month, in August of 2020, he put Santiago Hassim in the seat for the director of SENASA, which is Seguro Nacional de Salud, or in English, National Health Insurance. SENASA has two main types of affiliates: the subsidized ones and the ones that are actually paying for or contributing to their insurance. So in the recent years, after that administration started taking effect, there were rumors about financial troubles within SENASA, but nothing concrete had come to light.
Regardless, in August of 2025, Presidente Abinader decides to change up Santiago Hassim as director, and he is replaced with Edward Guzman, which is the current director for SENASA. Little did we know that later on we would get all this information regarding Santiago Hassim, the ex-director's administration.
In the beginning of September of this very year, two reporters did parallel investigations into SENASA, and what they found was absolutely mind-blowing. No one could have thought that things went this deep, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. So let's start off with the fraud case of people outside of SENASA. So Yulisa Cespedes was one of the reporters involved in this investigation. She discovered a fraudulent scheme of people that they actually went out and got an entire call center set up, and what they did was basically look into the people's approved amount for procedures and for medicines in order to defraud them out of that balance. So SENASA, what they do is they have an approved balance for, say, medicines. They give you 12,000 pesos per year. They know statistically that not everybody is going to use all 12,000 pesos in that year. A lot of people are completely healthy and they don't use it at all. And most people, if they even use it, they don't use up the entire thing. So the people that mounted this entire call center were ex-employees of SENASA, some of them. And so they had the way to get the information on when these people balances was going to renew itself on the next year. So that 12,000 peso balance was not accumulative, so it would renew itself on the next year. So when people were, say, 10 days away from it renewing, they knew that this person was most likely not going to use their balance before the 10 days were up. So they took that money and they reported to SENASA as if the person had used it. A lot of the times, these call center agents were very well trained and spoke to the customer, the affiliates. They basically said, hey, I know you have a balance on your available medicine account. Can you please sign it like you used up the entire thing, and I can send you all the medicines you need until that balance is over? In exchange for this, they offered the affiliates money, and of course, a lot of them jumped on the opportunity. So basically, if that person had the entire 12,000 pesos in their balance, then they offered them 4,000 pesos and send them over any medicine they would need for the 10 days, and they would take that 8,000 pesos. So little by little, they started defrauding affiliates from their balances, and of course defrauding SENASA, saying that the people had used up all that money. Another part of the scheme was also with the doctors. So a lot of doctors approved procedures they never even did. I personally know someone who was defrauded and who was a victim in this scheme because in her insurance, they actually reported a whole bunch of things that she never even did. The investigation on this regard is still ongoing, so we're not even sure the scale of the fraud, but as of now, they believe that those people with this parallel call center actually stole more than 41 million pesos in about 3 or 4 years. So of course, in order to pull off this type of fraud, you have to have accomplices in all areas of SENASA and in the pharmacies and the doctors in order to approve those fraudulent cases. And because there were rumors that financially SENASA was not doing very well, in the end of 2024, the government and the SENASA administration actually went to the public ministry so they can criminally investigate what was going on. So what I'm trying to say is this call center scheme parallel to SENASA was actually denounced by Santiago Hasim's administration back in 2024. So that part of the scandal, that artery, was already being investigated at the end of this year. The second large artery regarding the SENASA huge scandal has to do with corruption within the administration itself. The thing is that parallel to what Julissa Cespedes reported on in that parallel call center, another well-known reporter called Nuria, she got another explosive report on some incredible contracts that were signed when Santiago Hasim took his position back in 2020. So at the end of 2020, SENASA and of course Santiago Hasim at its head signed contracts with a company called CASO SENASA. The purpose of this contract was supposedly to make public hospitals less crowded, and they were actually supposed to give services at certain private clinics to affiliates of SENASA in the contributive and the subsidized categories. These contracts stood out in a really bad light because CASO SRL was assigned up to 500,000 affiliates from the subsidized part of SENASA. So people that were not paying the insurance themselves and are actually subsidized by the government were included in this contract. CASO is actually a company that is going to supposedly provide healthcare to the affiliate. So what stood out about this contract is the fact that CASO was going to be paid 138 pesos per each affiliate in the subsidized category, even if the affiliate did not even use their healthcare services. So basically, CASO was going to receive the whopping 65 million pesos per month, regardless of if they had given or rendered any service to anybody at all. Well, isn't that great for CASO? Also, within the services that were listed in the contract that CASO was supposed to provide, it listed all kinds of healthcare services like an eye doctor, a knee doctor, orthopedics, all kinds of things. And when Nuria called to have a random person be checked out, the people said that they didn't even offer the services in those clinics.
No, we don't have ophthalmology at Luperon.
What's more troubling is the fact that she had actually a client that was on the subsidized part call to one of those private clinics that supposedly held those services, and they told them in those clinics they don't even accept people from the subsidized category. So they're not even giving the services or offering any services at all to the people that the government is paying 65 million pesos per month to be serviced at those private clinics. Another horrible contract that SENASA signed was for medicines. So they also signed this huge contract where a company called PharmaCard was supposed to manage the authorizations and the balances with regards to the provision of the medicines within SENASA's affiliate. The weird thing about this contract was that SENASA already had a similar contract with another company, which they abruptly ended before the contract was up. And the other company, I think, was called DHN or DNH. The thing is that DNH company, they were really angry that SENASA ended their contract beforehand. So that's when it was brought to light that they had abruptly signed this other contract with PharmaCard. But you know what was very interesting about that PharmaCard contract? That not only did they get a whole lot of money, I think it was 168 pesos per affiliate per month, but what made this deal even sweeter for PharmaCard was that they not only were going to charge for the services that they were supposed to render to SENASA, but they were also going to take a whopping 4.65% from all the medicines that were sold from the pharmacies. So they were taking money from SENASA, but they were also planning to take money from the sales of the pharmacies. Que verdugos son. Needless to say, these contracts put into question Santiago Hacim's administration in SENASA, and it makes him look like a culprit to corruption and making these sweet deals for his friends, allegedly, of course. Also, this answers the question as to why SENASA was having such huge financial dealings and why those rumors were going on from 2021 on. It's because basically they were defrauding SENASA out of millions of pesos. So even if people were using or not using services, somebody was getting paid millions. I mean, if you think about it, an insurance company should earn money if they have a lot of affiliates. And that's because statistically, you never have 100% of people using the services that they are paying to receive.
As soon as the news broke out about these scandalous contracts, the new administration under Edward Guzman announced that SENASA would be canceling at least 10 of those contracts, and they will now be paying private clinics and private health centers by services rendered.
As the day I'm filming this video, the organisms that are supposed to supervise the healthcare system in the Dominican Republic have not been able to come up with a definitive amount of money that SENASA is out from these fraudulent schemes. But some experts are speculating that the amount that SENASA could be defrauded from amounts to 21,000 million pesos. Now let me explain the apparent contradictions between the statements of the president.
At the beginning of September, Presidente Abinader was asked by the press about SENASA, and he said at the time that there was already an investigation going on and that the government itself was the one that asked the public ministry to investigate what was going on in SENASA.
Fue el gobierno dominicano que depositó con autorización nuestra en noviembre del 24 para que se investigara el Ministerio Público. La investigación que hay ahora ya, antes de ningún reportaje, fue desde nosotros que vino esa investigación. Pero aparte del Ministerio Público, está la Cámara de Cuentas haciendo una auditoría ya desde hace varios meses.
Just a few days later, however, the president actually asked the governing bodies of the healthcare system to send a report of the irregularities of SENASA to the public ministry so they can investigate everything. So people were like, wait a minute, didn't you say in that conference a few days ago that you guys were already investigating this since 2024? Why the contradiction, and why are you now sending the governing bodies to send a report to the public ministry. So that's what people were confused about. The thing is, when Abinader first alluded to the topic and said that the government was already investigating this from 2024, he was talking about the call centers and the illegal activities and the fraud and the fraudulent schemes that were going on that regard. Those were in fact denounced by SENASA in November of 2024, and the public ministry had all the information and were investigating since that date. However, when the new reports that Nuria came up with about the weird little contracts that were going on and possible corruption within SENASA, that's when he went out and asked everybody to give all the information possible to the public ministry in order to investigate that new vein that was coming out recently. So in fact, there was no contradiction. He was just talking about the different veins of the investigation into SENASA that were going down at different times.
So when all of these contract dealings went public, Luis Abinader made a huge statement on X, and he basically said that he had friends, but he had no accomplices. Basically saying that if Santiago Hasim is found guilty of corruption and for basically making our national health insurance bankrupt, then Abinader will not stand by his side. And I think that was a mic drop moment, because he basically put it out there that he's like, hey, I'm your friend and all, and I put you in that awesome position as director of the National Healthcare Insurance, but I'm not going to be your accomplice to any corruption, okay? So he put it out there so everybody can know that he can be your friend, but he's not gonna back you up when you do the wrong thing. Now, a funny aspect to this entire thing is the fact that the public ministry subpoenaed Nuria and her program to get all the information they could on these illicit and corruption dealings that went on with those contracts. So basically, Nuria did the homework and the public ministry is trying to copy it. I think it's a little bit funny, but then it makes sense. If you have a really good reporter like Nuria already doing all this investigation and having all this info, of course the public ministry will want to get up and ahead faster with this information that she can give them. So what do you guys think about that? Comment down below. Now, I said that there was a possible link between this fraud case and also the American Medicaid fraud case. And that's because in the Medicaid fraud scandal case, there have been Dominicans that were indicted, and some of them were doctors, and those people were actually deported to the Dominican Republic in recent months. Therefore, one can just speculate that these people, these doctors that are here in Dominican soil that were just deported for doing Medicaid fraud in the States would want to come and kind of replicate that scheme here in the Dominican Republic. Because I can tell you, this type of very sophisticated, large schemes where you have to set up an entire call center type of ordeal with agents that seemed like they were trained to do this, that doesn't happen every day here. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that this huge scandal on SENASA actually came from a copycat criminal from the US, or do you think they are completely not related? I would love to know your comments down below. So because you are playing with people's health and people's lives, I think that this is the most nefarious and horrible fraud that has been reported in recent years. Well guys, this is me signing out. I hope you subscribe before leaving this video, and I'll see you in my next video next week. Bye.